Okay, I'm going to have to just pull it up again here. Wrong book. Oh, I pulled it from here. Link to textbook website. Chapter 9. Templates. So I'm looking for the 910. Okay, so guys, let's look at this one. As we move on, we need to go through and prepare this budget. They give us some information here. The units to be produced per quarter, and then from there we'll calculate our indirect materials, our indirect labor, our maintenance, and then come up with all of our fixed costs, okay? Fixed overhead costs per quarter, they tell us our supervisory salary, depreciation, and maintenance. So units to be produced, 10, 12, 14, and 16. So let's look here. And we're basically going to, Atlanta prepares the manufacturing overhead. Units to be produced, we've got 10, 12, and 14. Direct labor time is 1.5 hours per unit, right? Variable overhead cost is going to be 80 cents per hour. Our variable costs are 80 cents per hour, and indirect labor is $1.20 an hour, and our maintenance is 50 cents per hour. So it gives us all of our information right there. How are we going to prepare this? Quarter one, we're going to start with our variable cost. The first one is going to be indirect materials, 80 cents per hour. How much are we going to say there? Is there a way we can calculate this by taking our units to be produced, 80 cents per hour, times what, guys? How? By quarters, 10, 12, 14, 60. Labor time, $1.50. Variable overhead costs, indirect materials, 80 cents. Indirect labor, $1.20, and maintenance, 50 cents. Fixed overhead cost, we've got. Then it says, prepare the manufacturing overhead budget showing quarterly data. So we're going to show here variable overhead, indirect, $1.20, 50 cents. So our variable costs are going to be what? Well, it says 12, so that's what I'm trying to figure out what we're doing wrong here. We're at 910, right? cost per direct labor hour, that's our deal. So our cost per direct labor hour is what? 14,000. Our cost per direct labor hour, we're going to produce how many units? 8,000 units? We're going to produce 8,000 units, but it's going to take us 1.5 labor hours to produce our direct labor time, 1.5 hours per unit, okay? No, it's 10,000. So our variable overhead costs per direct labor hour. So to produce these units, how many direct labor hours do we need? 15,000, right? So 80 cents of 15,000 labor hours is what? 12,000. Okay? So I'm going to say 80 cents per direct labor hour, and that direct labor hour were 15,000 hours. It's going to be 12,000. The next one, how many direct labor hours are in quarter 2? And we're going to multiply that times 80 cents. So per unit, if it's 1.5 labor hours per unit, how many units are we going to produce? 18,000 times 80 cents? 14.4. Perfect. Let's take quarter 3. How many units were we going to produce? 14,000 units times 1.5 labor hours is 21,000 times 80 cents, 16.8. And then the fourth quarter, how many labor hours, or excuse me, how many units are we going to produce? 16,000 times 24,000 times 80 cents is 19,200, right? So we're going to need in indirect material variable cost 62,400. The next is indirect labor. Our indirect labor is going to be at 120 per hour. How many hours? 14,000 hours, wasn't it? Or 15,000 hours? Quarter 1, how many hours? Direct labor hours. 15,000 direct labor hours, okay? So 15,000 direct labor hours times $1.20 an hour is what? How about the next quarter? 18,000 direct labor hours times $1.20 for indirect labor per hour is 21.6. Next one. Quarter 3, how many hours? 25.2 is the cost. And for fourth quarter, 28.8. Okay? Next, we're going to have this, use those same hours per quarter. Maintenance is at 50 cents an hour. First one, 7,500. Second one for 18,000 hours, 9,000 bucks. The next one for 21,000 hours, 10,500, and for 24,000 hours, 12,000. E28 E28 to H28. Okay, now what are our total variable costs? Now our fixed costs they gave us, the supervisory salary was what? 35,000 across the board. And the next one we had is how much? Next was maintenance. Is 12,000. Right? Total fixed now our total manufacturing overhead is going to be the total fixed plus the total variable 99.5 107, 114, 122, and 443. Here's where our direct labor hours are. 15,000, 18,000, 21,000, 24,000 gives us our 78,000. Any questions? Can I move on, or do you want me to sit on this? Okay, now it asks us, we're supposed to prepare the quarterly data, but then we're supposed to come up with the manufacturing overhead rate per direct labor hour. How are we going to come up with that manufacturing overhead rate per direct labor hour? What are we going to do? Yes, so our 443,000 divided by 78,000 hours is giving us $5.68 per direct labor hour. Okay? How are you guys doing? Were we going to do 9/11 or was it just 9/10? Any problems on this one? I don't think so. We can move on to chapter 10 today. How are you guys doing? Do we want to move on to chapter 10? How many of you guys want to call it quits? How many want to move on to chapter 10? I guess we're moving on to chapter 10. That was unanimous. April Fools! Okay, so guys, can I tell you what I'd like you to do before you come in tomorrow, Thursday?